Letter 168 by Charles Lamb. Dated at end, 26 February 1808. Dear missionary, your letters from the farthest ends of the world have arrived safe. Mary is very thankful for your remembrance of her, and with the less suspicion of mercenariness, as the silk, the symbolum materiale of your friendship, has not yet appeared. I think Horace says somewhere, nox longa. I would not impute negligence or unhandsome delays to a person whom you have honored with your confidence. But I have not heard of the silk, or of Mr. Knox, save by your letter. Maybe he expects the first advances, or it may be that he has not succeeded in getting the article on shore, for it is among the res prohibiti et non nisi smuggulationis via fruendi. But so it is, in the friendships between wicked men, the very expressions of their good will cannot but be sinful. Splendida vicia at best. Stay, while I remember it, Mrs. Holcroft was safely delivered of a girl some day in last week. Mother and child doing well. Mr. Holcroft has been attacked with severe rheumatism. They have moved to Clipstone Street. I suppose you know my farce was damned. The noise still rings in my ears. Was you ever in the pillory? Being damned is something like that. Godwin keeps a shop in Skinner Street, Snow Hill. He is turned children's bookseller and sells penny, twopenny, threepenny, and fourpenny books. Sometimes he gets an order for the dearer sort of books. Mind, all that I tell you in this letter is true. A treaty of marriage is on foot between William Hazlitt and Miss Stoddart. Something about settlements only retards it. She has somewhere about £80 a year, to be £120 when her mother dies. He has no settlement except what he can claim from the parish. Pauper est sina, said Amat. The thing is therefore in abeyance, but there is love o' both sides. Little Fenwick, you don't see the connection of ideas here, how the devil should you? Is in the rules of the fleet, cruel creditors. Operation of iniquitous laws, is Magna Charta then a mockery? Why, in general, here I suppose you to ask a question. My spirits are pretty good, but I have my depressions, black as a smith's beard, volcanic, Stygian. At such times I have recourse to a pipe, which is like not being at home to a dun. He comes again with tenfold bitterness the next day. Mind, I am not in debt, I only borrow a similitude from others, it shows imagination. I have done 2 books since the failure of my farce. They will both be out this summer. The one is a juvenile book, The Adventures of Ulysses, intended to be an introduction to the reading of Telemachus. It is done out of the Odyssey, not from the Greek. I would not mislead you, nor yet from Pope's Odyssey, but from an older translation of one Chapman. The Shakespeare Tales suggested the doing it. Godwin is in both those cases my bookseller. The other is done for Longman and is Specimens of English Dramatic Poets Contemporary with Shakespeare. Specimens are becoming fashionable. We have specimens of ancient English poets, specimens of modern English poets, specimens of ancient English prose writers, without end. They used to be called beauties. You have seen beauties of Shakespeare? So have many people that never saw any beauties in Shakespeare. Longman is to print it, and be at all the expense and risk, and I am to share the profits after all deductions, i.e. a year or 2 hence I must pocket what they please to tell me is due to me. But the book is such as I am glad there should be. It is done out of old plays at the museum and out of Dodsley's collection, and see it is to have notes. So I go creeping on since I was lamed with that cursed fall from off the top of Drury Lane Theatre into the pit, something more than a year ago. However, I have been free of the house ever since, and the house was pretty free with me upon that occasion. Damn 'em, how they hissed. It was not a hiss neither, but a sort of a frantic yell, like a congregation of mad geese, with roaring something like bears, mows, and mops like apes, sometimes snakes, that hissed me into madness. 'Twas like St. Anthony's temptations. Mercy on us, that God should give his favorite children, men, mouths to speak with, to discourse rationally, to promise smoothly, to flatter agreeably, to encourage warmly, to counsel wisely, to sing with, to drink with, and to kiss with, and that they should turn them into mouths of adders, bears, wolves, hyenas, and whistle like tempests, and emit breath through them like distillations of aspic poison, to asperse and vilify the innocent labors of their fellow creatures who are desirous to please them. God be pleased to make the breath stink, and the teeth rot out of them all therefore. Make them a reproach, and all that pass by them to loll out their tongue at them. Blind mouths, as Milton somewhere calls them. Do you like Braham's singing? The little Jew has bewitched me. I follow him like as the boys followed Tom the Piper. He cured me of melancholy, as David cured Saul, but I don't throw stones at him, as Saul did at David in payment. I was insensible to music till he gave me a new sense. Oh, that you could go to the new opera of Kais tonight? 'Tis all about Eastern manners, it would just suit you. It describes the wild Arabs, wandering Egyptians, lying dervishes, and all that sort of people to a hair. You needn't ha gone so far to see what you see, if you saw it as I do every night at Drury Lane Theatre. Braham's singing, when it is impassioned, is finer than Mrs. Siddons's or Mr. Kemble's acting, and when it is not impassioned, it is as good as hearing a person of fine sense talking. The brave little Jew. Old Sergeant Hill is dead. Mrs. Rickman is in the family way. It is thought that Hazlitt will have children if he marries Miss Stoddart. I made a pun the other day and palmed it upon Holcroft, who grinned like a Cheshire cat. Why do cats grin in Cheshire? Because it was once a county palatine, and the cats cannot help laughing whenever they think of it, though I see no great joke in it. I said that Holcroft said, being asked who were the best dramatic writers of the day, Hook and I, Mr. Hook is author of several pieces, techily, and see you know what hooks and eyes are, don't you? They are what little boys do up their breeches with. Your letter had many things in it hard to be understood. The puns were ready and swift-like, but don't you begin to be melancholy in the midst of Eastern customs. The mind does not easily conform to foreign usages, even in trifles. It requires something that it has been familiar with. That begins one of Dr. Hawkesworth's papers in The Adventurer. And is, I think, as sensible a remark as ever fell from the doctor's mouth. Do you know Watford in Hertfordshire? It is a pretty village. Louisa goes to school there. They say the governess is a very intelligent managing person, takes care of the morals of the pupils, teaches them something beyond exteriors. Poor Mrs. Beaumont? Rickman's aunt, she might have been a governess, as both her nieces ate, if she had any ability or any education, but I never thought she was good for anything. She is dead, and so is her nephew. He was shot in half at Montevideo, that is, not exactly in half, but as you have seen a three-quarter picture. Stoddart is in England. White is at Christ's Hospital, a wit of the first magnitude, but had rather be thought a gentleman, like Congreve. You know Congreve's repulse which he gave to Voltaire, when he came to visit him as a literary man, that he wished to be considered only in the light of a private gentleman. I think the impertinent Frenchman was properly answered. I should just serve any member of the French Institute in the same manner that wished to be introduced to me. Bonaparte has voted 5,000 livres to Davy, the great young English chemist, but it has not arrived. Coleridge has delivered 2 lectures at the Royal Institution, 2 more were attended, but he did not come. It is thought he has gone sick upon them. He ain't well, that's certain. Wordsworth is coming to see him. He sits up in a 2 pair of stairs room at the courier office and receives visitors on his close stool. How is Mr. Ball? He has sent for a prospectus of the London Library. Does anyone read at Canton? Lord Mora is president of the Westminster Library. I suppose you might have interest with Sir Joseph Banks to get to be president of any similar institution that should be set up at Canton. I think public reading rooms the best mode of educating young men. Solitary reading is apt to give the headache. Besides, who knows that you do read? There are 10,000 institutions similar to the Royal Institution, which have sprung up from it. There is the London Institution, the Southwark Institution, the Russell Square Rooms Institution, and see, College Quays at Conledge, a place where people read together. Wordsworth, the great poet, is coming to town. He is to have apartments in the Mansion House. He says he does not see much difficulty in writing like Shakespeare, if he had a mind to try it. It is clear then nothing is wanting but the mind. Even Coleridge a little checked at this hardihood of assertion. Jones of Trinity, I suppose you know he is dead. Dyer came to me the other evening at 11 o'clock, when there was a large room full of company, which I usually get together on a Wednesday evening. All great men have public days, to propose to me to have my face done by a Miss Beetham, or Betham, a miniature painter, some relation to Mrs. Beetham, the profilist or pattern mangle woman opposite to St. Dunstan's, to put before my book of extracts. I declined it. Well, my dear Manning, talking cannot be infinite. I have said all I have to say. The rest is but remembrances, which we shall bear in our heads of you, while we have heads. Here is a packet of trifles nothing worth, but it is a trifling part of the world where I live, emptiness abounds. But in fullness of affection we remain yours. Manning had written in April, 1807, saying that a roll of silk was on its way to Mary Lamb. It was, however, another letter not preserved, which mentioned Mr. Knox as the bearer. Godwin sold books at 41 Skinner Street under his wife's name, M.J. Godwin, at first when he began, in 1805 in Hanway Street, he had used the name of Thomas Hodgkins, his manager. Damn 'em how they hissed. This passage has in it the germ of Lamb's essay in the Reflector 2 or 3 years later, on the custom of hissing at the theaters, see Vol. I. John Braham, 1774-1856, the great tenor and the composer of The Death of Nelson. Lamb praised him again in his Elia essay Imperfect Sympathies, and later wrote an amusing article on Braham's recantation of Hebraism, see The Religion of Actors, Vol. I. Kai's, composed by Braham and Reeve, was produced at Drury Lane, February 11, 1808. Old Sergeant Hill. George Hill, 1716–1808, nicknamed Sergeant Labyrinth, the hero of many stories of absence of mind. He would have appealed to Manning on account of his mathematical abilities. He died on February 21. Hook and I, this pun is attributed also to others, who may very easily have made it independently. Theodore Hook was then only 19, but had already written Tekeli, a melodrama, and several farces. Talfourd omits the references to breeches. Dr. Hawkesworth. John Hawkesworth, LLD, 1715–1773, the editor of Swift, a director of the East India Company, and the friend of Johnson whom he imitated in The Adventurer. He also made one of the translations of Fenelon's Telemaque, to which Lamb's Adventures of Ulysses was to serve as prologue. James White, Lamb's friend and the author of Falstaff's Letters, was for many years a clerk in the treasurer's office at Christ's Hospital. Later, he founded an advertisement agency, which still exists. Congreve's Repulse. The story is told by Johnson in the Lives of the Poets. Congreve disgusted him Voltaire by the despicable foppery of desiring to be considered not as an author but a gentleman, to which the Frenchman replied, that, if he had been only a gentleman, he should not have come to visit him. Young Davy, afterwards Sir Humphrey Davy, and now one of Coleridge's correspondents. He had been awarded the Napoleon Prize of 3,000 francs for his discoveries announced in the Philosophical Transactions for the year 1807. Coleridge's lectures. Coleridge delivered the first on January 12, 1808, and the second on February 5. The third and fourth were eventually delivered some time before April 3. The subject was not taste but poetry. Coleridge's rooms over the Courier office at number 348 Strand are described by De Quincey in his works, Vol. Roman II, 1863 edition, page 98. It was Coleridge's illness that was bringing Wordsworth to town, to be followed by Southey, largely by the instrumentality of Charles and Mary Lamb. It is conjectured that Coleridge was just then more than usually in the power of drugs. Sir Joseph Banks, as president of the Royal Society, had written a letter to the East India Company supporting Manning's wish to practice as a doctor in Canton. The similar institutions that sprang up in imitation of the Royal Institution have all vanished, except the London Institution in Finsbury Circus. Writing like Shakespeare. This passage was omitted by Talfourd. He seems to have shown it to Crabbe Robinson, just after Lamb's death, as one of the things that could not be published. Robinson, or Robinson's editor, Dr. Sadler, in recording the event, substitutes a dash for Wordsworth's name. Miss Betham was Miss Mary Matilda Betham, 1776–1852, afterwards a correspondent of Lamb. We shall soon meet her again. She had written a biographical dictionary of the celebrated women of every age and country, 1804, and some poems. Among her sitters were Coleridge and Mrs. Coleridge. The profilist opposite St. Dunstan's was, I take it, E. Beetham, patent washing mill maker at 27 Fleet Street. I find this in the 1808 directory. The shop was close to Inner Temple Lane. 2 undated letters to Miss Betham follow, which may well belong to this time. Mr. Ernest Betham allows me to take them from his book, A House of Letters.